Hello, Emma Thayer and Tom Breeze here with a short video sharing some work that we've done recently on the subject of curriculum design, AoLE working, the new curriculum, specifically about the expressive arts and particularly involving our two subject cohorts of music and drama. Some parts of the PGCE programme we do as AoLE working, so we bring our subject cohorts together to investigate some of the ways that we can go about implementing the new curriculum for Wales. And we recently came up with a project which started with a stimulus which Emma found when she was moderating some undergraduate drama work here for the university.
That's right. So these were level 5 second year undergraduate students on the BA English and Drama programmes here at Cardiff Met. And they'd been tasked with producing an audio walk, which is a performance style which combines theatrical performance, text, and audio, whereby the audience follow that text in place and space, and it's responding to the place and space and the text, sort of enhancing the audience's experience and giving them a new view of that place and space as they go on that audio walk. And it struck me when attending and being part of that audio walk, when moderating, that this was a potential opportunity for our PGCE drama and music students to experience this as a possible outcome of our combined subjects authentically being brought together that you could find in a secondary school setting. And we thought that working backwards from that, it would be really useful for our student teachers to consider how the two different disciplines could be brought together to produce an outcome like an audio walk without any risk of dilution to music and outcomes in music and drama and outcomes in drama. So we thought that might be a useful stimulus and an opportunity for us to consider how you might get learners to produce the same outcome.
So there was lots in that stimulus, an interesting drama form. Actually, the feedback for the students was that they needed to get some music in it. So although there wasn't some music in the original piece of material, there was some really obvious potential there to look at how the discipline of music could enhance this dramatic form without getting watered down to the status of sound effects. Actually, looking at music, there was, of course, also a digital competence angle. There was that nice kind of authentic nature of the performance as well, that it took place around campus. So the first thing we did is we got a cup of tea for those students and we asked them if they wouldn't mind coming in and performing this piece of work with our students. So our students found themselves wandering around campus in the morning with their headphones on, experiencing this piece of work, and then they had the opportunity afterwards to speak to the students and ask their questions about the work and about why they did the things that they did and what those decisions were.
Yes, quite. And it struck us that given that these were level 5 undergraduate students, the sort of work that they were producing that does bring together our two disciplines is the sort of work that we would want our secondary school pupils to be aspiring to produce. And this is the sort of work that authentically does bring disciplines together. And the aspirations of Curriculum for Wales is that the pupils are able to make those meaningful, powerful links. And so we knew that the fact that level 5 students were doing this in their undergraduate studies was definitely a reason for us to consider what that looks like in the secondary phase. So we had to decide how we were going to give them some input ourselves and give them the benefit of our experience of doing this sort of work for several years now, of looking at cross-curricular pedagogies within the expressive arts and the sort of traps and pitfalls that student teachers can fall into, and teachers in the profession, how we would give them the opportunity to consider that and then to consider how they might use that knowledge and information to plan or to be able to articulate their thoughts about how to do it in a secondary context without falling into those traps and pitfalls. So a starting point that we've used for that in the past that has really gotten our student teachers thinking about bringing subject disciplines together in a powerful way is to start with the detail that we have in the curriculum for Wales documentation within your designing your curriculum areas with regards to the individual arts disciplines. Now, we noticed from a music and drama perspective that there is not exactly the same information and subject detail across all of the arts disciplines, but just looking at what we do have would be a useful jumping off ground for our students in trying to identify where there were similarities in the detail. For example, the elements of music and what you might call the elements of drama, although there are lots of other things going on in the detail for the drama. And where we definitely are very different. And where there's that kind of sweet spot, where there's potential for kind of similarity between the two disciplines, that's maybe fertile ground for those powerful connections between disciplines to be made. So we quite carefully try to model that to our student teachers before then asking them to look at the lists of subject detail that we do have and to categorise them in the following three ways. Number one, detail where there is absolutely no similarity. And what that means is that the word or the detail for subject discipline means something completely different in music to what it means in drama. The example that we give is proxemics. Proxemics in drama is about the spatial distances between actors on stage and actors and audience. And we don't have that word in music. There is no potential for connection there that we can see. However, rhythm is something that we do share, but has a slightly different meaning in music than it does in drama. So this was the second category, words that we find in both of our lists that mean different things, but potentially are fertile ground for powerful connections. And then finally, the third category, words that mean exactly the same in music as they do in drama. And the example that we give is tempo. So through the course of going through that kind of sorting exercise to create a sort of Venn diagram, the students start to think really critically about the detail that is in the curriculum documentation and guidance on Hub. And they start to have some really interesting conversations about where those powerful and meaningful connections could potentially be made.
So that was the first half of our day, the input. So they had a performance, they had a stimulus, a piece of material that had lots of potential for combining our subject disciplines, and they also took a dive into those curriculum documents to make sure that they were working from a disciplinary point of view when doing it. After a lunch break then, we needed them to produce some sort of output from the information that we'd given them. Now, we tend to jump straight towards this idea of planning things. Our students are often having a go at planning either short-term things or sort of medium and longer-term things, schemes of work, that kind of thing. We decided to go for something a little bit different this time, just to mix things up a little bit. And so we asked our student teachers to spend some time preparing an answer to the question, which may come up at interview when they're looking for a job. How would you organise and deliver the expressive arts in this school being a fictitious school where they were applying for a job? And we felt this was a really useful thing to do, not least because new members of the profession are likely to be seen as having some good ideas about the new curriculum, and we felt it was more than likely that some of our students would get asked variations of this question. And so, rather than the planning option, we had them thinking about their employability.
We did, and this was something that went down very well with the students. They were given time to prepare, to test out their ideas with one another so they could work independently, they could then trial those ideas with others. And then we sort of did a mock interview panel where the students worked in a sort of carousel. They had their 2 minutes each, but at the same time, collectively as a group, they were trying to look for common threads between their answers or across their answers, with a view to a speaker who could then summarise some of those key threads. So what you're about to see now are the fruits of the students' labours.
Some of the recommendations that we came up with was to have really strong cross-curricular departmental links across the AoLE. This includes having more freedom of expression and ensuring that our engagement is learner-led. This includes having a Year 6 transition project to work on in the first term of Year 7, so something that's really creative and that we can showcase to the rest of the school. We also believe that music, drama and art teachers should be more aware of each other's subject terminology. So one recommendation we have is creating an expressive arts dictionary resource for all of the faculties, which also links to P8, exploiting subject disciplines. We also strongly believe in collaboration and having regular meetings across the AoLE, which also links to C1, working with in-school colleagues. We believe that team teaching should continue with teachers after the PGCE. This models to students something that happens in the professional world as people collaborate in teams on a project. We believe that the expressive arts shouldn't just be one subject where one teacher teaches all of the AoLEs. We also believe that each subject should have equal lesson time, as having an indifference in lesson times can signal to children that some subjects are more important. We also had a discussion about all the AoLEs linking together, not just the expressive arts AoLE, and implementing a theme across the whole school. This could continue on from primary and have a project for all subjects. This again gives a real-life context and gives learning a purpose for pupils, which helps to raise the school ethos and the 4 purposes, which is P6.
And we were really quite pleasantly surprised with the substantial and well-argued nature of those summaries that came from our student teachers at the end of the day. And it's really helping us understand now that if we are to implement the new curriculum for Wales in a successful way, we need to be able to zoom in and out between these really big ideas, these big overarching statements of what matters. Those things are easy to articulate, but they're not necessarily always underpinned by a strong disciplinary grounding and foundation. And we're getting a body of research together which is showing that that is very, very important as well. So we need to be able to move all the way down to that level. We also need to not neglect that glue in the middle, what people like Lucy Crean are referring to as the middle tier, those concepts and knowledge which sit in the middle between the big ideas and the nuts and bolts right at the other end, and allow us to make sure that there's some rigour going on there.
Absolutely. So we hope you find that useful, and maybe it provides a bit of a framework for how you might go about considering how we make these powerful connections in the expressive arts in your context.